to partner with us, we still have some tickets that you can have that you can use to raise funds for yourselves, right? And to the members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, I know we have not mentioned it in a while, but don't forget that our coin drive is going on. So try to see how best all those loose chains or the coins that you have that you don't know what to do with them. Remember that we are collecting them. You can make your drop-offs at what's the name of that plaza? It's on Constant Spring Road, and the office is beside Express Fitness. So I think is that one mall? Is it mall?
Mall Plaza, sir.
Mall Plaza. See, I was right. Trust your instincts. So you can do drop off of your coins at Mall Plaza, the office just beside the Express Fitness. You can't miss Express Fitness. It's big and red. So you will see it once you go inside. Or if it's easier for you to get to any member of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, you can also make your donations there. You can bring the coins to us, and I promise you, we're going to make a very good use of it as all proceeds will go towards our charities. And this year, we want to put specific focus on the Salvation Army and their initiatives. All right, so you did not come here to listen to me speak all evening, as well as it's time for you to be officially welcomed to our meeting and for you to tell us who you are and where you are joining us from. So at this point, I will turn over to our Vice President, Uncle Andrew, and he will be doing the welcome and the roll call of clubs.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this our weekly meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. We're gathered here today to hear a series of short stories and events that will be brought to us by DP Stewart. And I figure several persons might be locked into the match. I think it's Panama and Croatia playing right now. But we're 14 strong on the call. With a quick scan, we're mostly family. But I invite persons from the Kiwanis clubs of Western St. Andrew and New Kingston to unmute, introduce yourselves and the delegation, as well as anybody else who I might have missed on the call.
Good night.
Good night.
DP Robert here from Kiwanis Club of West St. Andrew.
Hey, DP Robert.
Looking forward to your nice meeting. Looking forward to be learning as usual from DP Stewart.
Right.
I see one more of my member online, and I expect others. I know, as you said, football match, but I'm a Brazilian, so you'd
All
find me
right.
here. Brazil wasn't playing. Brazil was playing today. I wouldn't be online. So yeah, man.
Right. All right. Thank you, DP Robert. Welcome to you and your delegation. I see some of our friends from the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. Welcome. Dr. Marlene and DLG Girthlin. DLG Girthlin is pretty much family and honorary member of the Club of Kingston. So welcome. Always good to have you in the meetings. Is there any other club present visiting that I have not highlighted? Any other Kiwanis clubs here with us thus far?
Sorry, Uncle Andrew, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute. I don't know what happened. And
Good
you
evening.
know, that a lot of persons not on. I think they've had so many meetings on.
Yes.
I left the leadership meeting not too long ago. So, you know, there are
Yes.
lots on. But it's great to join your meeting. And as usual, thank you so much for having us. I heard you said Marlene. I haven't looked to see who are
Yeah.
on. So Have
right.
a wonderful meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I see
Thank you.
I see DLG Bev. I believe this is our club coach. DLG Bev, welcome. Special welcome to our meeting.
Yes, that's me.
Yes.
Your club coach. Yes, it's good to be here. I'm just listening out for the good things to come.
Yes. Yes. Excellent.
All right.
Stay tuned for the series of short stories and events that will be shared.
Yes.
Yes. And just in case, are there any guests on the call? Whether signed in with somebody, like alongside them? Anybody who was invited by Kiwanian to join in our meeting this evening? No. Okay. Again, welcome one and all, and we move the meeting along. I hand back over to President Zuri.
Thank you, VP. I'm being heard clearly, right? Am I being heard?
Yes,
Yeah, you're
very
being
clear,
heard.
loud and clear.
Okay, thanks, because it seemed like something was happening just now. My screen appeared to have been frozen. Thank you, VP. I have received only one apology for absence. That's Director Andy Jean Baptiste. He messaged that he would not be able to join us this evening. Do we have any other apologies for absence? Asking the members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston.
I didn't receive any present.
Okay, all right. Thank you, dear G. Willie. So I take it that we don't have any other apologies. So we're going to move to recognition of birthdays and anniversaries, and that will be done this evening by President-designate Arsenio Sawyers.
Good evening again, everyone. Just like to acknowledge those persons who will be celebrating a special day this week. So we have past treasurer Gregory Gibson, who celebrates his birthday on the 23rd as today. Happy birthday to you. We have another birthday for DLG Warwick Bogle. That's on the 27th of June. Then we have two anniversaries for DLG East Standonwell and his wife Patricia. That'll be on the 25th, as well as Kiwanian Jerry Lee Sin and his wife Suzette on the 27th. And now, if there's anyone else on the call with a special day this week, feel free to open your mics and share with us. Okay, there being none, happy birthday to all who are celebrating and happy anniversary to our celebrants as well. Back to you, President Zuri.
Thank you, President-designate. We'll now have Kiwanis education, and Kiwanis education will be done by DLG Vice President-designate Desmond Batchelor.
Thank you, President Suri. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, fellow Kiwanians, SLP members, and guests. Is that, what is that on the screen? That's not mine? Okay. But the topic is really on the Kiwanis Foundation of Jamaica. The Kiwanis Foundation of Jamaica operates as a charitable arm of Kiwanis clubs in Jamaica. And its purpose really aligns with the broader Kiwanis mission and the work of Jamaican Kiwanis clubs or Kiwanis clubs in Jamaica. The core purpose really supports Kiwanis projects focused on children in Jamaica by providing funding, grants, and resources to local clubs and initiatives. And some of the funding children and youth projects. The foundation helps finance. Some of them they may not do, but we'd expect that they will do it. finance signature projects across Jamaica, such as the Bugs program, could be the Terrific Kids program, beach cleanup, and partnership with organizations like the Women's Center of Jamaica. Finally, I'd say, in fulfilling the Kiwanis mission locally, Kiwanis International really is a global organization of volunteers dedicated to improving the world one child and one community at a time. And the foundation channels that specifically to Jamaican communities and assisting children. And that's it for Kiwanis Education, President Zuri. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale G. And we are at Bet You Didn't Know. So I bet you didn't know that much about Kiwanis Foundation, but now you know. And now you have an opportunity to go and find out more about not only the Kiwanis Foundation, but Kiwanis movement in Jamaica. Find out more about the organization that you serve. Bet you didn't know, we are now at our main event, and it will be brought to you by DP Stewart. So he's going to tell us what he thinks we did not know. Let's find out. Over to you, DP Stewart.
That's a good way to put it, President. I just need. Hold on, let me turn down something. Testing. Okay, no feedback. Everybody's hearing me now?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay. It's a little bit awkward for me because I have to be using my phone, and my phone is also my mic. So bear with me a little bit. Let me just check. I have to do something else. One other thing I need to do. One sec. Okay, fellow Kiwanians and guests, as the flyer says, bet you didn't know, and I put a series of short stories and events. So there's a little mystery behind the title, but I guess those of you who are here are curious to know, as the president said, what I think you didn't know. I'm sure some people will know some things, but I promise you that you probably won't know all the facts that I'm going to present this evening. All right, the first item I'm going to talk about is it's a little history. It's about a community of let's call it a Black settlement. And I'll tell you, it was in New York. It's in New York, but I'm going to start by giving you a little background. In 1857, the city of New York. Okay, let me not tell you that part. Okay. There was a thriving enclave. Founded in 1825, Seneca Village was located on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Now, I won't tell you exactly between what streets yet. It became Manhattan's first prominent community of African-American property owners. Voting rights, property ownership was incredibly significant at the time of 19th century New York. Black men were required to own a certain amount of property to legally qualify to vote. A multi-ethnic community developed by the 1850s in the village had grown to around 225 to 300 residents. It was roughly 2/3 Black and 1/3 Irish and German. This is interesting in the sense that it was originally a totally Black community, but after a while, Irish and German residents started to settle in that community. Everybody was living harmoniously away from the crowded, disease-ridden environment of Lower Manhattan. Then there were some issues. The neighborhood was not a shantytown, as detractors claimed. It featured over 50 sturdy homes, 3 churches, and a school for Black children. But smear campaigns developed. To justify seizing the land, park advocates, engineers, and local newspapers ran media campaigns describing Seneca Village residents as squatters, vagabonds, and scoundrels. The forced eviction under a particular act. The city seized the property via eminent domain. That's a legal term referring to, it happens in Jamaica as well, where the government or a city government can designate a particular area as an eminent domain because they want to use it for something else. But while landowners were given financial payouts, many argued the compensation was well below market value and fought the seizures in court. By 1857, all residents were cleared out, with police forcefully removing those who resisted. The entire village was leveled and the community was scattered across the city, losing their homes, churches, and voting rights. The history of Seneca Village was largely forgotten and erased from public memory for over a century until historians and archaeologists began unearthing artifacts and records in the 1990s. Today, this particular piece of land is what we know as Central Park. That is how Central Park came to be. And there's a common thread in a couple of situations that I've read where wherever Black residents settle and are doing well, a couple of things tend to happen. Either there's a violent incursion where they have to flee, or there's the use of legal means when the city comes in and there's using eminent domain to basically take over the land and inadequately compensate persons. So that's my first story for this evening. I don't know if most of you knew about Seneca Village, but I'm sure you know about Central Park. So this location, you know, Central Park is really probably the most famous park in the world, probably. And so many music events are held there, and it's just, you know, a place for New Yorkers to relax. But did they really have to displace? Was that the only piece of land they could have used? You will hear other stories that are similar, but not exactly the same. Okay, my second story is, now I have to do something because I have to, okay, I'm gonna use, I need to pull up certain things on my phone. So it's gonna take me about 30 seconds. Just give me a second. Okay, I'm sure you're all familiar with the practice of, you know, we do it here in Jamaica. We do it here in this club, what I'm gonna tell you about, where we ask our members or other citizens to put together a bundle of your clothes, all the clothes that you don't wear, but it must be in good condition. all right? And then you send it to a central point, and the person who is marshaling it, it can be somewhere like some place like the Salvation Army, or it could be some other organization. These are put together and distributed to the more needy among us. And what we do in Jamaica is pretty okay. It's pretty okay. There's nothing underhanded about it. And it is an act of charity and an act of giving. However, in places like the United States and Europe, it's not exactly how it works, right? For example, they have thrift stores. So people who want to dispose of their clothing and so on might take their stuff to a thrift store. And they think they're doing a good deed. And in a sense, yes, they are. But what we find is that the thrift stores tend to only sell about 10%, maybe a little more than 10% of the stuff that they've taken. So what happens to the rest? Well, there is a thriving business of exporting secondhand clothes, and it goes mainly to Africa, mainly to African countries. Now, the way it works is that these people, and this is a big industry in the United States, but it also exists in Europe, where they put they put bundles together, and then they fill their containers, and they ship these containers to Africa. It's mostly Africa, but I'm sure it's not exclusively Africa. But Africa is one of the big points where it ends up. And entrepreneurs in Africa buy these trailers, buy them by the trailer, and then the vendor, the small vendor in the marketplace might buy a bundle. You might pay $100 for that bundle. Now, out of that bundle, about 40% of the clothing is basically trash. And this is deliberate, basically trash. But out of it, you might get a few jeans and some t-shirts and so on. And then the vendor turns around and sells it in the marketplace for people who, are prepared to buy that. This is a big business, but it has a couple of negative effects. And I want to highlight 2 countries in Africa who have said no. In fact, the first country that said no to this kind of importation and stopped it completely was Rwanda. The President Paul Kagame, Kagame, you can pronounce it how you want. He did in 2018. He stopped it. And what do you think happened? The persons who were involved in the business from the U.S. end appealed to their Congress in order to try to force Rwanda to continue to accept these. But Rwanda didn't budge. They didn't budge. And the US put sanctions on them, one of which was where Rwanda was able to export duty-free stuff into the United States, they canceled that facility in order to try and force this African country to continue. But they decided no. They said no to the US, something that we are kind of, the climate, the air right now is kind of, we're experiencing something similar. Now, this was in 2018. Now, what happened after that? What Rwanda was interested in, it was not just the indignity of importing secondhand clothes from people who, you really shouldn't be doing that. It was more about their local industry, because what was happening is that importing those clothes killed the local textile industry and also the local manufacturing industry. And so by banning those things completely, their industries were able to revive and also use indigenous African materials. So now in 2000 and more recently, in fact, very recently, probably just this year, another African country decided this is not no, we don't want any of this hand-me-downs or this garbage from the United States. And that country was Burkina Faso under President Ibrahim Traore. He just banned it completely. He didn't have a phased-in period, just totally banned it. And the whole idea is that, no, I don't know if you know, but Burkina Faso is one of the largest cotton producers in the world. In other words, they grow a lot of cotton. And they have also recently begun processing cotton in Burkina Faso. Whereas before they used to export the raw cotton, then to other countries in the West, they would clean it and then sell it back to them as medical cotton or absorbent cotton, that kind of stuff. But he just totally banned it. And today, Burkina Faso also is experiencing better. In fact, one of the things that he wanted to do is to encourage the citizens to use the local material and the textiles that are produced in Burkina Faso. One particular thing that he did, you know, when you see pictures in African countries and you see them dressed up with their wig and in these kind of garments, we still use things like that, you know. What he said, no, do not wear any of the colonial relics of these symbols. We're gonna use African clothing. And so all the judges and all the judiciary, they are now dressed in garments which you would not associate with what the British judiciary would wear, but it's theirs, and it's African, and it's Burkina Faso. So that is basically an example of where the West dresses up things as though it is a charity issue, when really and truly it is not. Because if you're only selling about 10%, if only about 10% of this clothing is really going to people in need, then that's not really the objective. And that is a particular situation. So that's my second story. I don't know if any of you are aware that this, but as I said, in Jamaica, we don't have that issue because we don't have that kind of scenario going. What is collected here tends to go to people who really need it, and there's no export of that kind of clothing in Jamaica. Now, the third story I want to mention is based on a movie. I don't mind if you tell me how many people saw the movie Hidden Figures. If just open your mic and tell me if you saw the movie Hidden Figures, and if you remember. Anybody online did see the movie? I can't see hands.
No.
You didn't see it. Okay. I'm sure some people did. But let me just tell you, basically, the story revolves around three women who were brilliant women, but who were employed by NASA, right? The space organization that is in the United States. One was named Katherine Johnson. One was Mary Jackson, and I can't remember the name of the third one. But they all had different roles working with NASA. But Katherine Johnson was the principal of the three, in the sense that her activity helped to the space exploration that was going on at the time. She was the one who did all the calculations in order to help to ensure that what was coming back in could land safely, and that the orbits that they wanted to reach were met. And she was doing all of this by hand in terms of the calculations that she was doing. She was a brilliant mathematician. Now, in the movie, there's a scene where she's seen walking back into the office and she's wet. Okay, she's wet. And the boss, the character is played by Kevin, not Kevin, Costner. Yes, that's right. Kevin Costner. He asks her, Where are you? Where is it you disappear every day for 40 minutes? And she, in a rant, says, because there are no bathrooms here for me to use. The bathrooms are segregated, and there are whites only bathrooms. So I have to go half a mile to relieve myself. And that is, and when it was raining, she still had to go. And this boss, obviously he's acting like he's basically like he has never heard, he didn't realize that this situation existed, even though he should have been aware. And he takes what do you call that now? It's a kind of it's not a hammer. It's a kind of anyway, it's a tool, a metal iron tool. And he hits down the sign which says, this is a whites only bathroom, and says, well, there are no longer any whites only and blacks and bathroom for blacks, because we all pee the same color. Now that's a scene in the movie. And it's a scene which would make you think, well, at least one person was empathetic and was a pretty decent human being. But what I found out? That character, that boss, he didn't exist. They made him up. They made up that character, and it's a strategy that is used in movies. Sometimes we're not aware of it, where there has to be a white savior. In other words, when there's a movie that is showing white, especially if it's showing white inhumanity to blacks, they don't like to leave the movie as if to say there's no redeeming white person. So they have to create a white person to make it look as though we're not all bad. But that character was totally fiction, total fiction. The incident didn't happen. Now you might say, okay, one of the reasons why they might say, why I said, well, let's see what reason did they give for making up that character. Well, one of the reasons given was that the real boss, right? He's obviously dead now. And I should say obviously, because Catherine just died just a few years ago. But at the time when they were making the movie, he had already passed, and his estate would not give permission to use his likeness or his name. So that's one reason. But that's not the strongest reason. Because the fact is that they wanted to create more drama, and therefore this person had to be invented. And it's a strategy called the white savior, and it appears in a number of other movies. But here's what is also interesting. The scene where she goes to the, takes about half an hour to go to relieve herself. That also never happened. That also never happened. When Catherine joined NASA, she didn't know at the time that there was a bathroom for black people and a bathroom for white. She just used the bathroom that she saw. And then when somebody pointed out to her, or when she became aware that this was a whites only bathroom, she just continued to use it anyway, and nobody dared stop her because they needed her mind. Now, I'm saying, why couldn't they have made that part of the story? And the reason is simply, you can come to a different conclusion, but the conclusion I came to is that this was Virginia. And to show that a black woman was openly defying the laws, because these were laws in Virginia, and that NASA was powerless or chose not to do anything about it, that was not something they wanted to sell. They didn't want to sell that part. So even though that could have made also a dramatic part to the movie and truth to the movie, they didn't want to include that. So they had to show her as a suffering person who went away and then, had to go half a mile down the road to relieve herself, and that this white savior is the one who would step in and save the day for her. So this is a way in which movies are also distorted. There's one other scene in the movie where Mary Jackson, she wants to do she needs some subjects. They are college subjects, but they are taught not that she doesn't have to go to the college to do these subjects. Those subjects are also taught at a school, a high school, but it's a whites only school. So she needs to get permission to attend the school. And then there's this dramatic scene where she appeals to a judge. And it's as if she did research on the judge. And she's telling the judge how he was the first to do this and he was the first to do that. And why wouldn't he also like somebody else to be the first? And the judge looks at her in a sympathetic manner and agrees. So now we have another white savior. But the other part of the story is that scene never took place. She just did the procedural, what was needed to be done procedurally to get permission to attend the white school just to do those subjects. And then she became the first female aeronautical engineer at NASA. So that's just an example. And I'm going to touch on one other movie. How many of you saw the movie, The Green Book? The Green Book, the title is of the Green Book. What the Green Book was a book that Black people used to buy and carry with them whenever they were traveling from the north to the south. Because the Green Book told you of where you could, places where you could stay, places where you could, hotels where you could eat. In other words, places where you wouldn't be harassed and places where that would not turn you away. So so the name of the book, name of the movie is The Green Book, but it doesn't really play a very prominent part in the movie. The movie is just entitled The Green Book because it's about a virtuoso, a pianist. His name is Dr. Don Shirley, who is going on tours. He's a musician. He's a classical musician, but his record company doesn't think that America wants to see a Black pianist playing classical music. So he improvises and does slightly different style, not exactly jazz, not jazz, still classical, but he has these tours that he goes down south. So he hires a white guy. The guy was a bouncer in a club in New York, and as his driver, okay? And I won't tell you more of the story because I just want to tell you one example in the movie, which is interesting. In the movie, there's a scene where Dr. Shirley is detained in a sheriff's police station. Like, let's call it a police station. I think like they would call it a sheriff's office. He's behind bars. And he's saying to the sheriff, I am entitled to a call. I'm entitled to make a call. And they're kind of ignoring him. But eventually they agree that he's entitled to a call. And he makes the call. And as soon as he makes the call and he hangs up, a few seconds later, a call comes into the station. The sheriff answers it. Takes about a minute. And as soon as he hangs up, he tells his other persons, get him out of here. Release him. And when the guys start to argue, but he says, just do what I tell you. Don't argue with me. That is Jamaican, but he wouldn't have said it exactly like that. And that is how the scene goes. Now, what was the truth behind that? The truth is, he was never arrested. It was the driver who was arrested in an altercation with the sheriff's deputies. And the person who he called, you know who the person he called was? Because he was involved in the civil rights, in some way, was RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr., who was the Attorney General at the time. But the movie makes you think that he was the one who was arrested, where really and truly it was his driver who was arrested. So another example of, I don't know why they thought it was necessary, because the impact of him making the call to RFK, which we don't really know then that he's the one who is calling. But then we realize, well, why, what was wrong with the truth? Or did they just have to show that it was a black man who was incarcerated? Okay. So I'll leave that part for now. But those are two good movies that I enjoyed. And I was just curious, and I was really kind of disappointed when I realized that Kevin Costner didn't exist. But I understand now why. Okay. Now, here's a short one. Do any of you are aware? Okay, Robert, I don't know if he was aware that there was a time when Africa boycotted the World Cup. Is anybody aware of that?
I think I vaguely remember it.
Okay. In the 60s, in the lead up to the 1966 World Cup, at that time there were 16 teams in the World Cup. Only 16 teams got to the World Cup. And in 66, well, that was a World Cup in England. But before the qualification period started, FIFA allocated one spot for the whole African continent, but not just the African continent, for Asia and for Oceania. One spot. And through the influence of, I think it was Nyerere, no, is it a Nyerere or Nkrumah? They said, look, this is nonsense. What they asked for, give Africa one spot. Give Africa one spot. Because remember, these African countries were basically, at that time, they were just emerging from colonial status. Okay? But the African countries said, but okay, give us one spot. Don't let us have to fight for one spot among Africa, Asia, and Oceania. And FIFA said no. FIFA said no. So the 15 African countries who were, I guess, had football teams at the time, decided we're not going, and they boycotted it. And then in 1970, which was the next World Cup after that, or for the 1970, FIFA turned around and said, okay, they will give Africa one spot. And from one spot in 1970, granted the number of teams has grown, so today, where Africa has 10 teams in the World Cup, that is happening. However, there's still a question mark if the leadership is because of the people who have been turned away from African countries, the referee, some players that didn't get their visas and this kind of thing. I've heard it even happening in Canada, because we're focusing on the US, but I've heard there are cases in Canada where Canada has rejected some persons and not given them visas for entry. Players, in fact, the last match that West Germany played, it was against, okay, who is it now? I think it was Ivory Coast. Right, I think it was Ivory Coast. And I figured Ivory Coast was gonna win. Then I realized that was just my feeling, because I'd seen a match with Ivory Coast playing against France, and they beat France. This was before the World Cup, just a couple of weeks before the World Cup. And I said, I think they can take on Germany. But one of the persons who was denied a visa, one of the star players was denied a visa, was on that Ivory Coast team. So these are still the things that are happening. So we need to ask the question, no, does Africa have to do something else? Maybe not boycott, but some other strategy so that this doesn't happen again. Anyway, I'm going to leave that for another time. Now, before there was Venus and Serena, how many are aware of another woman who was a champion tennis player and won the Wimbledon, the US Open, and the French Open? I'd hope some of you would know the name or would know about her. But let me tell you about her. She was Althea Gibson. Althea Gibson played tennis in the early 1940s to 1950s. And in that time, segregated tennis was the norm. She never got to play against the white players until about 1950, because she had been winning. There was I wouldn't call it a black league. Tennis doesn't call itself a league, but there was another association that allowed black players and had tournaments for black players. And she was the champion for about 10 years, but never got a chance. And then it was a white person, I think she was also a player, I don't remember her name now, who wrote a letter to the US, call them the US Federation. They might have had a different name at the time, embarrassing them about their refusal to invite Althea Gibson to the US Open, this is the US tournament, and they had control over that. And eventually they did. I'm not sure exactly when was the first time she played the US Open, but it would have been in the early 50s. But she then went to all the different tournaments, the French Open, the Australian Open, the US Open, and Wimbledon. Now at Wimbledon, well, her first singles victory was at the French Open. I think that was in 1956. She won the French Open. And I think she also won the doubles title at that year, female doubles. And in 1957 and 58, she won both the US Open and Wimbledon in successive years. So she has come away with five titles, 5 singles titles, and also about 6 doubles titles. I think one was a mixed doubles and the other 5 were women. So, but guess what? At the end of even that level of success, she was broke, because if you remember, or if you may remember, tennis at that time was an amateur sport. So she wasn't earning anything. All the athletes got was a stipend, to help with their expenses. But the white players, even though they had the same condition, they weren't getting enough payment. They could get coaching jobs into the clubs, the country clubs that wasn't open. No black player was gonna get a coaching job in the white country club. And also there were certain under the table payments that they were also benefiting from. A black player like Althea Gibson never got any of that. So she was broke and couldn't really serve. So then she had to look around. She tried her hand at singing. I don't know how good a singer she was, but then she realized that golf, there was a professional golf league at the time for women, and there were tournaments. So she decided to take up golf. She had never played golf before, and she's a kind person who assisted her in getting a club membership at a golf club, helped. And one of the things that she did, or what she created, because she was a Wimbledon champion and a tennis champion, people were curious to see how good a golf player she was. So she brought out crowds. Crowds came out to see her. And then eventually, she didn't win, she never won any golf tournament, but she was consistently in the top 50 in terms of earnings. And I think her highest ranking was in the 20s, which is pretty decent for a professional person. So that was really, but during that period of time, even before, while she was playing tennis, she couldn't use the restrooms. She couldn't use the changing rooms or bathrooms. She had to change in her car. And these were the kind of indignities. So she actually set the path for people like Venus and Serena, who came along, and Arthur Ashe afterwards, as some of the persons who helped to break the color barrier. But all praises to the early efforts of Althea Gibson, and those who are interested in that those sports, it is something that should be remembered. Now I'm going to turn to Jamaica. I wanted to find a couple of things about Jamaica that, you know, it's hard to find things about Jamaica that people don't necessarily know. So, you know, I tried hard. And a couple of things that came up. The Mona campus that we know today, that houses, you know, the university and the university hospital, all of that land. How many persons know that in World War II, it was established as a refugee camp? And well, I don't know if it was the British or the Americans, but Jews who were trying to escape Nazi, I wouldn't say Nazi Germany because it was Nazi Europe at the time. It was more than just Germany. Hundreds of Jews were brought to Jamaica and settled on that piece of land, which didn't have anything else on it at the time. They built, you know, accommodations for them. And so in World War II, the lands at Mona were a refugee camp in World War II, sorry. And when the university started, I think it was 1948, the same buildings, the structures that were used, those are the ones that housed the first students, both as a lecture hall and both as a residence. So that's the history, a little history behind Mona, the Mona campus. Now, there's also, have you ever heard of a Jamaican medical doctor who had to be called in order to doctor, if I want to use the word as a verb, the King of England? I don't think you have heard of him. There's this doctor, his name was, I'm trying to remember what his first name was, but his surname was Moody. I might remember it before the evening is out. He had gone to England in the early 1920s. And he had to set up his own practice because he couldn't get employment in the regular hospitals and so on. But somehow he had a specialty in respiratory, you know, illnesses. And somehow I guess his fame became known because this was King George V, was very ill. And the doctors who were attending to him couldn't figure out what to do. And they had to go and solicit this Dr. Moody, Jamaican born. I can't remember if well, at that time, he would not have been able to become a doctor in Jamaica because that was pre-your days, right? So he must have gone abroad and studied his medicine. He must have studied his medicine abroad. But he was called to the king's bedside, and he was being a specialist in respiratory illnesses. He told them what to do, and the king recovered. So he actually lived most of his life in England. He had 6 children. He didn't come back to Jamaica very often, but he did on a number of occasions. But the last time when he came back to Jamaica, he was trying to raise money. Okay, let me tell you this before. He was also not just a doctor. He formed like a colored association, as association for Black people, in order to help to like a civil rights type organization in London. And he came home in 1946 to try to help to raise money to build like a Caribbean, I'm not sure what you would call it, but something more than a community center, but a center. So, but he kind of overexerted himself during that particular visit. I guess he was getting pretty old at the time. And he died either soon after he left Jamaica, or maybe, I'm not sure if he died in Jamaica. I can't remember that part. But at least his legacy is there in the sense that he as a Jamaican, was called to save the king. Now, this other person that I want to tell you about, you know his name, but I don't know if you know the full story of what happened when he tried to go to the Olympics. Now, I'm sure you've all heard about GC Foster, and it was the I think it was 1908 Olympics. He paid his way on a banana boat to go to London, and he basically was intent on running in the 100 meters. But Jamaica had no official Olympic association. There was no affiliation with the Olympic committee, and they refused to allow him to enter. And I guess he didn't know that that was a requirement. So he didn't just turn back home and say, boy, tough. He stayed around in London after the Olympics and competed. This is the part I think some people may not know. Competed in a lot of the open track meets. And they had open meets after the Olympics in London. And he beat many of the medalists who were in the Olympics. So he had that as his record. And then now we honor him by naming our sports college after GC Foster. And then there is another person I want to tell you about. This is another Jamaican. I said I had 4 stories about Jamaica. Now, because I don't want to take the time to open my phone to some of these different ones, I will have to remind myself afterwards of the name of this guy. But do you know, and I think I used this question in one of our quizzes some time ago. Do you know that the first black player, the first black person to play at Wimbledon was a Jamaican? I don't know how many people know that. But the first black player to play at Wimbledon is this guy. And I'll tell you his name after, because I just can't remember, and I didn't write down his name separately, but I have it in my phone. He was really an all-round kind of an athlete. He played a number of sports, including tennis, of course. And he went to I don't know, I guess he would have to play qualifiers if he wasn't ranked, didn't have a ranking. But he did play at Wimbledon. Now, obviously, there's no record of him winning anything, but that's not important. He is the first black man to play at Wimbledon, and he was a Jamaican. Now, the story doesn't quite end there. In early 1920s, Prince Albert came to Jamaica. Now, Prince Albert is the one who went on to become King George VI. And King George VI was the father of Queen Elizabeth II. So just to put it in a time, scale. He came to Jamaica in 1927. That's the report. And I guess he obviously stayed at King's House. And when he was there, he wanted to play tennis. And he wanted a doubles partner. And this same gentleman is the one who he chose because he knew about his exploits. So this Jamaican, the first black player to play at Wimbledon, played as a doubles partner for the future king in Jamaica, again, in a doubles, just a doubles match. So that's the 4th of my stories for Jamaica, which I don't think most people know. All right. So let's move along. We'll just have a couple more. Let me just get back to my...
DP Stewart.
Yeah.
I put the name in the chat. Could it be Bertram Melbourne Clark?
Right, that's correct. Thank you for that. Okay. And he actually went to JC. So all the JC persons, I don't know if any JC person on the call, but he actually went to JC. And he excelled in some other sports, but it's really the tennis why I brought him up. Thanks, Desmond.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. There are two more issues that I want to raise. Now, you see what they did to the settlement in New York because they wanted to create Central Park. This practice has gone on. In fact, it's used even the interstate highway, you know, the I this and the I that. Quite often when they go through towns or in various communities, it's not a coincidence that they always go through where Black people settle. They always, I guess, well, we don't have to ask why. But there's another technique that I became aware of some years ago because I heard an anchor, a news anchor, mention it, and I went and I researched it. There are a number of Black communities, and you wouldn't believe what they did. There are three that I can remember, but again, because I'm just going off the information. One, I have it in my phone, but it will take a little while for me to find that particular presentation. But the principle is what is important. When there's one of them in particular, I think you all know that at various times in America, especially about the 1900s, 1910, 1920s, there were a lot of race riots. In fact, I remember watching a movie called Rosewood. Rosewood was a movie about a community in Florida, not Miami area, but higher up, more further north in Florida, where this Black community was fine. You know, they were just living their own life. And people, the history of the United States is replete with instances where you have Black communities who are doing well, and then white people who who are jealous of the success of these Black communities. They find some excuse to start a conflict, and then it goes into a war. And then the Black people have to flee. And so I saw this movie, Rosewood, and I realized it was based on a true story because the place Rosewood still exists in Florida. But that led me to doing a lot of research on other riots that took place. There's East St. Louis. There is Tulsa. Now, Tulsa is probably the most famous one because that was the home of Greenwood, which is often referred to as the Black Wall Street. Communities that had everything: hotels, banks, restaurants, schools, churches, the full gamut. These were self-sustaining communities during the period of segregation. And various excuses were found to just destroy these communities. In fact, Tulsa was firebombed from the air. And in all of these cases, none of the security, well, call them police and, whatever they are, there was no help. All these people had to do was eventually, they might try to fight back, but eventually they would be outnumbered and they just had to flee. Now, one such situation arose, and then a number of these communities, and I just mentioned a few, but I won't go into those details. Some of you may have heard about them anyway. But this is another strategy. What do you think of the situation? Okay, so you use eminent domain again. One particular community, after they had these riots, the people had to flee, and then the city comes in, uses eminent domain to capture the land, because the people are not coming back. It's not safe for them to come back, and they capture the land. So what happened in this case is that they eventually wanted to build a dam, and in other words, they just flooded the area. One was because there was a public utility that wanted to provide electricity by hydro, and they just plug it. So there are a number of Black settlements where if you were to go down deep enough, the whole city is almost still intact beneath the water. And these lakes, these are now lakes where people vacation and swim on, and you know, whatever kind of racing thing they do on with these power motors on water. That ski, right? The jet skis. And they use that. And below these waters, below these lakes, there are almost intact communities that were just buried, but not buried with earth, buried with water. So, it's such a sad situation. And one of the things that I want to mention is that people sometimes look at American blacks and we talk about the wealth gap and we talk about all these things. And some people who don't know the circumstances are even critical of Black Americans, not realizing that on several occasions, multiple occasions, these people were building generational wealth. And because they were not allowed to reap the benefits of their labor because of things like eminent domain or racial violence, and they had to get up and leave, and so on, that this is what happened. Now, there's one last story I'm going to mention, and there's a reason why I left it for last. In that there's this man, his name was the surname is Bruce, but he and his wife were in California. They lived in California. And at that time, because of segregation, Black people couldn't use the nicer beaches in Southern California. So he owned this piece of land. I think they bought this land. And they were determined to create a safe space for Black people, other Black people. They had restaurants, they had a dance hall, quite all the amenities for recreation that Black people could enjoy. And then along comes the city, and they want the land. Now, it wasn't really that they wanted the land. They just didn't want to see Black people thriving. That's as simple as that. And that's the history of the United States. They just didn't want to see Black people thriving. And what happened now is they eventually used eminent domain and took the land because they said they wanted to turn it into a park. Decades after, there was still no park. They never used it for one goddamn thing. They never used it. But what is good about this story, well, it's partially good because the owners originally, they have died and moved on, but they have descendants. In about 2024 or 2023, somewhere about that time, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, did what was necessary in terms of the paperwork, and the land that was stolen then was returned to the descendants. And that's one of the first stories of where this has happened. And it is being used as an example of how to try and get compensation for a lot of the other properties that were seized using eminent domain and so on. In fact, I can remember also when President Clinton was in office, one of the things he did, that community called Rosewood that I mentioned, he did pay reparations to the descendants. He did approve reparation. I don't know how much money they got, but he did approve reparations for the descendants of Rosewood. But in this particular case, this is called Bruce's Beach. This is what this place is known as. But what happened though is because the place was now being used as a training facility for lifeguards. So they valued the property at $20 million US. So, which seemed to have been a fair valuation at the time. This is in the 2020s now, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. So what the descendants did is they sold it back to the city for the 20 million and said, well, okay, you can continue using it. I guess they may have been scattered all over the US in terms of, but they were the descendants. So at least there's one example of an ending which didn't turn out too badly. But what is now happening, NAACP is using various legal methods in order to try and recover, and this is a set a precedent that they can use, and hopefully more of the disenfranchised Black people who have suffered through. I mean, it's just amazing that what Black people have gone through in America. But I will stop there. That is where that's where I decided that I would stop. So if you have any questions or anything else, I'm open. Even if it's not about one of the things that I mentioned, but if you want any further clarification, I'm open.
All right, DP,
Thank you.
so before you take the questions, may I have a motion for the extension of time to complete the meeting, 15 minutes?
I so move for the extension, President Zuri.
Thank you.
Second,
May I have a
President.
seconder?
Second.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. And I
Second.
suspect the ayes have it. So 15 more
Okay.
minutes.
Okay. Anybody has any follow-up?
Stewart,
No,
DP.
I have my hand up for.
Okay, let me put on the screen so I can see it, Bev. 1 second.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah,
Bev.
it's not a question. Just want to just say a few things. I'm also speaking on behalf of Russ because he was listening in, and indeed he was quite touched with things that he might have not known when it comes to, I call this Black history, because you have touched on so many things. And I just want to ask you though, well, an observation, that movie with Kevin Costner,
Yeah.
where the girl, the Black girl, was away for lunchtime, extended lunchtime. When she came back,
Yeah.
she said she stayed away because she had to use the bathroom, and it's how many miles away? Of
Yes.
course, she would be late.
Half a mile. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't see the movie, but I think it was a documentary or excerpts. One I was looking on TV one night. And I'm saying to myself, you said no, that part of it was not true.
Yes.
It was
The
not
research
true.
the research that I've done is that
Uh-huh.
she never actually walked half a mile to go to the bathroom. There is another incident though, although this was not in the movie, where the Mary Jackson character, that was the character played by Janelle Monáe, right?
Yeah.
She had a run-in because when she got to the place that she was working, she was the aeronautical engineer, and she asked where her bathroom is. They laughed at her and pointed where it was, and I think she made a stink out of it. No, that was not part of the movie. So I don't know if you're saying, I don't know if you're saying that you have heard something different, but if you had heard something different, it could have been in reference to that character, but that scene was not in the movie.
But I was just thinking that particular movie was supposed to be a non-fiction movie.
Yes, but
right.
Yes,
so,
that's correct.
Right. So how do you comprehend that part of it where it was not true?
No. The point is to say, even in non-fiction movies or biographical type movies, there's such a thing called creative license, and it's always used. They never ever follow, because let's face it. In fact, the actual boss that Katherine Johnson had, let me tell you, he was not a character but I don't know if we would have called him a racist. He was more like the kind of executive who is concentrating on getting the NASA project going. And he is accepting the status quo of this kind of situation. If they are segregated bathrooms, then that's what the law says in Virginia. He's not going to go around and do anything about it.
Mm.
And the character, when I tried to get something or what he was like. And to be honest, his character, if you were to play the movie like how he was and replicate him, he would have appeared like a boring person. So, sometimes in these situations, you kind of have to create excitement, you have to create drama. And we accept that when you watch a biographical movie. Not everything in it is going to be accurate. You just, I'm prepared to accept that. But sometimes a pivotal act like that is something which I'm saying, boy, I didn't know that to make up a total character that never existed. And that's kind of why I included this in the story this evening.
Right, that really got to me, But finally, I just want to say that sometimes for me, for these black movies and these movies that show in History Month and all of that, I get angry. I get angry at lots of these documentaries and whatever, because it irks you to the bone to see how black people were treated, and they're still being treated now.
And that's the
the irony about the whole thing now is that it's rearing its ugly head once again.
Yes. In fact, they want to take back rights that have been won, rights that were won. They're trying to reverse them.
Yes.
Even with the Voting Rights Act, that they have, the Supreme Court has, chopped out some of the protections that existed. So this administration has been trying to reverse. So that, so it's a horrible life to live. It's a horrible life to live.
So I'm suggesting that you could have a part 2 of this kind of discussion regarding the latest happenings in the black world.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I know Russell was listening and he was enjoying it also.
Okay, heal him up for me.
I will.
Okay, good. Robert, I see.
Oh,
your hand is up, Robert.
Yeah, FDP Stewart. As usual, always say, you're full of knowledge. So I'm always glad. I always, in Black History Month, I always say, the Black Wall Street, always tied up to when Marcus Garvey did his thing, and how during Black History Month, how they always highlight many things that seem to put whites on top, but it was really black persons. But I'll be very short. G.C. Foster. Why can't I forget G.C. Foster? Hubert
Hold
Lawrence.
on 1 second, Robert.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes. Why can't I forget G.C. Foster? Hubert Lawrence had, I think it's a book, Champion of Champions, that he wrote. I was writing just before his death. And I remember that it was on TV, oh my God, TVJ Sports Network or something like that. Now, we know these two great coaches, Stephen Francis and Glenn Mills. Back in the day, G.C. Foster, as I said, went to England. He studied the Englishman, he studied the Europeans. And I remember this stick system, what they had, where they were running 3 lines.
Sorry, you're breaking up a bit. I'm not hearing it. You're breaking up a bit. I'm not hearing it so clearly. Say it again.
You hearing me now?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, he used to beat them. And they used to undermine him when he went to the hotels. Give him no ends of trouble. So sometimes this man don't get any sleep. But when him go out there, pay him money to go to the events, and he still try to undermine him, he end up beat them. And then he took that training back to Jamaica. And so we have our great athletes till this day. But he took that training that he learned from the Englishmen and the Europeans. So I always remember that what Hubert Lawrence told us about that book that he had with G.C. Foster. I really didn't.
Okay, I haven't read that particular book, but I wasn't aware. I don't know how long he actually spent in America. But let me give you another angle to how we got to where we are. There's another person that you would have heard of called Dennis Johnson. Are you aware of Dennis Johnson? Hey, Robert, are you aware of Dennis Johnson? Okay,
The
I don't know if
athlete?
you. Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah,
Dennis
yeah, yeah. I'm aware
Johnson.
of Dennis Johnson. I'm aware of
The
All
Dennis
right.
Johnson.
coach.
DJ.
Right.
That's all.
Yes.
Yeah,
He went to
DJ was
Calabar.
the one who used to run from Calabar, I think, to Halfway Tree,
Yeah.
you know, so?
No, I don't know about running from Calabar to halfway tree, but he was
Yeah.
a Calabar athlete, and
Yeah, man, man.
he was
DJ.
100-meter champion. He
Yes.
broke the world record either 3 or 4 times in 1 month. No, not broke. Sorry, equaled. Then that time you're running 100 yards, and I think it was 9:3. And I remember he actually equaled the world record. Now he was at, I can't remember the name which college was it, and I'm sure it says Louisiana State or which one, but his coach was Bud Winter. Bud Winter was his coach. And he definitely learned from Bud Winter. And in fact, when the bolts of lightning started at youth, well, what was then cast? You remember bolts of lightning? That was Dennis Johnson. And in fact, the way the story goes is that he basically handed over that particular, let's say, that nucleus to Stephen Francis. So I can't say much about GC Foster in terms of the coaching. I don't know that part. But what I do know is that Dennis Johnson's, the link between him and Bud Winter, it was those techniques that he used. And he started, he was basically the first person who was training seniors in Jamaica. But the seniors were at UTEC, our cast at the time. And that is where that local unit emerged from. So that's the history I'm aware of.
Oh,
Okay.
well, just to add this quick one. We remember Russia, or USSR. So Valery Laboski, who had at the time Dynamo Kyiv, I think it was, and they won sometime in the 80s. His training, part of that was athletic. The same coach, Bud Winter, took some of the Russian training that they had with strength and conditioning, and it turned out, as you said, with the same Bud Winter into producing champions. Yeah, so that's why I've linked all of them, sir. So that's
Okay.
it from me.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. President, I don't know if there's if nobody else is ready. I didn't send you a message, President, but DP Rupert is prepared to do a thank you
Vote
for
of
the
thanks?
evenings. Yes, I didn't get to tell you because I couldn't get to send you a message.
Okay. Well,
But if
DP
there's nobody,
Rupert.
yes, yeah,
DP
okay.
Yes, Spurs. Yes, Spurs.
President Zuri,
Yes, DLG Desmond.
can I ask DP Stewart on the next occasion you tell us the history of Germantown in Westmoreland?
Okay. Okay.
Good.
I can certainly look into that. That's all right. No problem.
All right. So while we give him some time to do that, we will give DP Rupert the opportunity on behalf of everyone present this evening to say thank you to DP Stewart.
Thank you, Prez. I must confess that I know DP Stewart love to talk, but this evening you really took us to school. I don't know how we got enough time to research all of these things, but he gave us a little bit of anthropology, history, sports, geography, sociology, survival. He talked about the arts, economics, African American studies, Jamaican studies, British influences, and other things. E.P. Stewart, I've always wondered about that gray matter between your two ears, but tonight I'm grateful that the Lord gave it to you because you really helped us out in understanding so many things tonight. And like others, we just not only want to say thanks to you, but you need to probably give us a part two Can't wait until February. But thanks for updating us and telling us this world is in a real precarious position when it comes to a lot of the gains and rights that especially blacks this side of the world have had. And thank you for giving us a history. Thanks for telling us. Thanks for educating us. So on behalf of all of us, thank you, Doc. Have a good night's rest. If I were your mother, I would give you some milk. If I were your brother, I would give you something to drink. Since I'm not near to you, all we can say is thanks until we see each other.
Thank you, Rupert. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, DP Rupert. And again, thank you so much, DP Stewart. So the fines keep rolling and rolling. Now we are at 1,500. I still have not seen where anyone has paid their fines. So now the fine is all the way up to $1,500. And if you refuse to pay, the fine will keep climbing. So it's a blanket fine of 1,500 per member, right? So each week you refuse to pay, the fine will go up. So you know what to do. I'll now hand over to Dale G. Willie for notices and announcements and interclubbing opportunities.
President, may I remind you, I think we need to be a little more serious in respect of the fines. Fine is only $1,500, not realistic. But we need to have a structure whereby we can collect or even invoice at the end of the month, but that has to be assigned to somebody.
It's 4 weeks. It's 4 weeks fine. So it's not a one-off fine of 1,500. It's 4 weeks.
Okay. Understand. All right. Regarding announcements and notice and announcements, let me just update you on the funeral for past director
Trevor Ford.
Sure.
Trevor Ford. I'm just looking at if I can read what I just wrote. This Saturday, June 27th, he will have his first memorial service at the Westside Baptist Church, and this is in the Boynton Beach in Florida at 10:30.
Every time I put my thing.
His
Mute.
body will be coming out to Jamaica. He's been his funeral in Jamaica will be on July the 4th at 10 o'clock at the Boulevard Baptist, not the Boulevard Baptist, Baptist Church and Halfway Tree.
Open Bible?
Bethel.
Bethel. So that's right, Gertin. Thank you. That's your church, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
All right. And then I understand from DP Bev that his daughter called today to find out if anybody would be interested in going down for his burial, which would be somewhere in his hometown, that would be Beechertown in St. Anne. So we have to get further information as where the internment will be in Beechertown.
I'm sorry, Willie.
Yes,
sorry,
go ahead.
Dale G. Willie. She just called me to while I was on your meeting to say that she would love to get numbers for the bus. Remember, we were saying there's going to be a bus that will go down to the burial site so people don't have to drive. A 30-seater bus. So she wanted a count from your club, and I don't know if members from my club will be going.
Okay, that would be on the same day as you've been.
The 4th of July.
Okay. All right. I would send out an email in the morning and see how many people respond. But I know that at least 3 or 4 of us have agreed sometime back that we'd be going down. So I would assume at least we'd have at least 8, at least a fellowship to go down and support March and the children. All right. Just to the other announcement that I have arranged a visit to DP Evan Brown. I haven't spoken yet to Desmond. Desmond hopefully can put together a team. He has agreed with me when I spoke to him this morning on a separate matter that he would appreciate a visit this Sunday at 4 o'clock. So Desmond, I know that DP Chris has volunteered to go. I'd be willing to go. So if we can find one or two more people, he's expecting us on Sunday afternoon if you're available. Those are the only announcements we have for now. In terms of interclubbing opportunities, I will circulate the information in the morning. That's all for now, President. Maybe you want to ask any club, the visiting club may have any announcements to, this is the opportunity. But just to reinforce, President, the upcoming benefit performance of the National Dance Theatre Company on Saturday, July the 18th at 8 o'clock. New Kingston has confirmed that they will be partnering with us. We're still hoping, and as well as I see President Maurice on the call, West St. Andrew are also partnering with us. I don't see any other clubs that may be interested, but I'm in the process of sending out another letter to the presidents inviting him to partner with us. So hopefully we'll get some good news. Over to you now, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you, dear Jubilee. Is there anyone on the call who wishes to inform the others present about any upcoming event, activity that you are having? Giving you the opportunity to do so now. Going once.
Let me just interject here. Hi, President Maurice here, West St. Andrew. Willie.
Yes, sir.
Willie. I'm actually following up on the flyer. How soon are we expecting the flyer? Because that's a very critical part for us to send out and try and get our partners on board.
We're going to get it in the morning. I spoke to the gentleman. He's making some amendments to the previous one, and we'll have it in the morning. So I would send it over to you. So you can
much appreciated. Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir.
All right, going twice. Right, going 3 times, opportunity gone until next week. At this time, I ask if there is any other business. Right, there being no other pressing business, I do not see DP Marcel on the call. So, but DP Stewart, you have been doing a good job over the past 2 weeks with assisting us with a thought for the week. Do you have one for us this week?
Yes, President, I can come up with one. Just 1 second. It's okay. Yeah, it's the things I do today that I don't have to that will determine where I'll be when I'm not able to. So that's my thought. It's the things I do today that I don't have to that will determine where I'll be when I'm not able to.
Thank you. Thank you, DP Stewart. So remember to ensure that your deeds are good so that where you will be good also. Right? I think we have enjoyed and we have learned. And as they say, all good things must come to a pause. So at this time, I invite all those present to raise their glasses with me, imaginary, literal, figurative, in a toast to Kiwanis International and to Jamaica, land we love. This meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated at 8:53 p.m. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Great meeting. Thank you, Prez.
Thank you, DLG.
Yes.
Stewie, lot of research done, man. Thank you. Good
Yeah, man,
evening, everyone.
Stewie.
Wonderful.
Thank
Stewie
you.
has been always
Thank you,
good.
Rosalie. Thank you.
Good shows too.
Thanks. Let me just stop these streams and so on.
Any music tonight, or I can leave?
Yeah, I'm gonna play, but I need to stop the stream and stop the recording. So just give me a second.
DLG Gertson. Is she still on? Okay, maybe not.